The venue is set in a home, the food, fine dining. And while there's no alcohol, you still might leave with a buzz.
I've served over 12,000 people their first infused dining experience. 58% of my clientele are females. Every group was sharing together, and it was magical. When we dose accurately and safely, we put people in this perfect state.
Former Master Chef Canada contestant is adding a little green to his latest dishes, and we're not talking about vegetables.
It's the terpenes within those strains. So terpenes are not just the flavor and aroma of cannabis, but they're also responsible for the effects you feel when you use it. When I'm creating a menu, each course has a specific terpene that I'm focusing on.
Welcome. You're now listening to Just Bobby.T.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today I have a good friend who is changing the game in an emerging industry, doing and bridging two different areas in cannabis and in culinary. Travis, what's up? How are you doing today?
Robert, man, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Long time no see.
Too long, Travis. Too long. So welcome. First off, I got to say welcome back to Canada.
Yeah.
And I want to know, how have you been?
I've been good, man. I've been busier than ever. I've been happier than ever. Life is beautiful right now. So it moved to the U.S. 2 years ago and got the green card officially a week ago.
Congrats on that. And you got married? Like, I haven't seen you since the whole thing.
Dude, the pandemic was good to me.
Okay.
The pandemic, that first day when you lose every job that was coming up and you think the world's ending, you're like, what the fuck am I going to do? And just pure panic. And it's funny how it opened everything up. You know, right before the pandemic came along, I did my first event in San Francisco, sold it out, was excited, wanted to go out and celebrate and go to a Michelin star restaurant. Yeah. But I didn't want to go by myself. So I thought, hey, we'll just jump on one of these dating apps. We'll find someone to go out with tonight and it'll be good. And that's how I met my wife, man. Fell in love hard that first night. And then the next morning I said, hey, you want to come up to Canada in a couple of weeks? Got her a plane ticket. And, the pandemic comes along and I just told her, I want to spend my life with you. And so we eloped in Presidio Park in San Francisco on August 29th, 2020, sorry. So we're just coming up on our 3-year anniversary.
I was going to say the anniversary is just around the corner right here.
Next week, yeah. So, and then we actually came back up to Canada that next summer, 2021, when things were really tough. You're not allowed more than 6 people inside. Yeah. So I got a sponsor to rent us a 40-foot RV, and we drove across Canada and did 37 outdoor dinners in 8 weeks. Drove 8,000 kilometers, and at the end of that, we moved to the U.S. And why did we move to the U.S.? That previous Christmas, we went down to my mother-in-law's in Arizona. Yep. Everything was open.
Everything.
Nothing was closed. No mask mandates. Life was normal. And in my head, I'm sitting here going, wait, Arizona has an aging population. Why is shit not falling apart everywhere?
Why are they kind of almost leading the way amongst kind of that whole process, that whole kind of space and thing?
You just look from the media point of view and the way they were looking at Arizona and Florida and all these states, like these governors were crazy and these right-wing nuts, and life was normal. So
before we dive deeper into that, because I want to talk about sort of your experience in the States, let's take a step back. And for the ones who don't know you, Travis, tell us a little bit about sort of who you are and what you have been doing in this emerging space and with your culinary skills.
Yeah. So, I moved to Edmonton in 2010. I spent 15 years working in the oil and gas industry. I was a business development manager for one of the world's largest valve companies. Yeah. 2015, I jokingly applied for MasterChef. I get on it. I bomb, get eliminated on the second episode, and was like, okay, well, back to that career, oil and gas career.
Wait, and let's take a step back and stick there for a second. Yeah. Why did you apply for MasterChef? And tell us quickly, if you can, what was that process like? Because I think there's a lot of value in sort of that experience, and clearly that kind of put you on a new trajectory. And so,
absolutely. I applied because it was Friday, 4:00, and I needed to kill an hour before leaving work. And so I went on, and I was a fan of the show. Yeah. I loved cooking, but I've never worked in a kitchen. I never took classes. I like to cook, right? And so I applied for the show and I got on it. And very quickly got there, and like I'm a very confident person, and I got there and realized like I knew nothing. Right.
And Travis, how do you have the cojones to step up to that plate, especially and accept that, like, let me now go into this competitive?
Because if you let fear hold you back, look at the opportunities you might miss, right? Like, here we go, great Edmonton quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So I went on this as more of an experience. I wasn't planning to become a chef. Even when I get eliminated 9 days in and I come home, I'm 31 years old. I'm not starting out in a dish pit, working my way up through a restaurant. That recession hits oil and gas here in the province, 2015. And I got laid off 4 weeks after filming. Got a severance package that would carry me through for 6 months. And so I said, let's give this a shot for 6 months.
Cool.
Right? And so those first 2 years doing pop-ups here in Edmonton, started working for a couple of the Edmonton Oilers, doing, some personal meals for them.
Yep.
And
the pop-ups were, I imagine, like, were they multi-course dinners and meals?
Multi-course, Northern Chicken here in Edmonton. They didn't used to be open on Wednesdays.
Okay.
And so he would let me come in and do the dinners in there.
Awesome.
I then go back to Vancouver. A friend of mine here at Edmonton, him and I start the Nomad Dinner Club, and that's where I come along and meet you. So, 2 years into the Nomad Cook, I'm starting to think, okay, maybe the chef thing really isn't a long-term future plan for me. So what am I going to do with this? So we start the dinner club, and we start bringing in celebrity chefs from the U.S.
Yeah.
And my whole pitch to them was, hey, I'll put 3 events on for you at Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver.
Yep.
We'll sell the tickets. Just let me work in the kitchen with you.
Cool.
Right?
And correct, to backtrack a little bit, how did you know these celebrity chefs, and how did you?
I just went on Instagram and messaged them, right? And so I must have messaged 50 chefs. 5 replied. 1 said yes, Sylvia Barban.
Yep.
Who's now my mentor and one of my close friends.
An amazing lady, like
amazing.
Personality.
And such a talented
skill.
chef. And, she came, we did those dinners for her. There were so many hiccups and bumps along the way, but we got through it. And, she went back to the U.S. and vouched for us to everyone else. So that's how we were able to get the other chefs. Had she come here and not had a good experience, we don't get anyone else here. And that's how I got introduced to you. And right around that time is when I start doing Cannabis, right? And I'm starting to get national attention for it. And
if you can go back to your first Cannabis event, or sort of what got you into this idea?
So one of the most famous cannabis chefs, Chef Chris Soleil, who's known as the Herbal Chef, he came up to Canada in 2018, 5 months before legalization, and did 2 dinners, one in Toronto, one in Vancouver. He was on the front page of the Georgia Straight. So I saw that newspaper and said, why is an American coming here doing this first? I'm going to do a cannabis dinner. So I turned my house into a pop-up restaurant, and we had 164 people come through in 4 days, doing 5 seatings of 12 a day. CTV calls and says, hey, would you do an interview for CTV Victoria? Right?
Yep.
It's only going to air in Victoria. Sure, no problem. I'll go on camera and talk about this illegal thing that I'm doing.
and just to just so all the listeners understand that, what was going through your mind when the spotlight, like, you were putting the spotlight on yourself in an avenue that still was not flushed out? And to your point,
I don't know. I really listen. I don't always think of the consequences.
Okay,
right? I'm a bit of a risk taker, and I've always kind of had one toe over the line. So, my thought was, what's the worst that can happen? They're going to shut us down, right?
Totally.
So, CTV's like, don't worry, CTV Victoria only. Now, part of their 5-minute piece on the event, they went to Health Canada to ask them for a comment on the event.
No way.
Right? And Health Canada's like, this is not legal. And I get a call from Health Canada that Friday at 4 o'clock, or not a call, an email, asking, where is this dinner? And I said to myself, why did he wait till 4 o'clock to send this email? He doesn't care. I'm not responding till next week. So we went ahead and we did the dinners, and it was amazing.
Yep.
That CTV Victoria thing airs at 5 o'clock.
On the Friday.
It airs, the Thursday. It airs the Thursday at 5:30.
Yep.
And then at 6 o'clock, CTV National, they lead with that story. So
And you didn't know this at the
no,
time
they,
until
they told me that it was only CTV Victoria, but they lead it on the national, and my phone and email explode. Every newscast in the country wants an interview.
Yep.
People in Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa. Will you come here and do these dinners? And, that was the only time I kind of got my hand slapped by Health Canada. They never followed up on me again. It just was whatever. So I was like, man, there's something here with this. I didn't want to be called a cannabis chef at first because I was assuming this is a fad, right? Cannabis is becoming legal. This will be cool for a little bit and it will fizzle off. But, to date now, I've had 900 first-time cannabis users come in,
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't want to serve them.
Totally.
Right? So watching the different demographics of people come in and then bond. Like, it doesn't matter what culture, what background, what age you are. And I was like, okay, maybe there's something here with this. So,
And you know what, Travis, like seeing and watching you grow over these years in this emerging space, but more importantly, around the experiences you build on that, one thing that I think I've witnessed and I've seen, it's like, I would argue the room gets contained around this idea of like curiosity.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, just to stick on this like sort of bonding, like from your perspective, what do you think is sort of allowing people that are from different demographics and backgrounds bond together around this experience?
It's the plant. You think about it, like maybe pre-pandemic, it wasn't too weird to see someone smoking a joint and be like, hey, can I have a toke? Sure. Right? You'd never do that. Someone drinking a beer. Hey, can I have a sip of your beer? Right? So there's something really special about this plant, and where we hence heighten all their sensories, right? And so we put them in a real relaxation. It's not about getting people super stoned, right? Like we don't want to go that far. Some do. You get some chronics that come in that want high dosed, but I dose every guest individually based on their own tolerance. So when I first started out, I was using isolate. So where you isolate THC, it goes into a little tincture and you can eye drop it on top.
Okay.
Right. That's a way to sort of gain confidence. In my opinion, it's more lip syncing. It's not true culinary cannabis.
Okay.
Because, you're just eye dropping it on top. Now we're creating full spectrum extractions using, flour, hash, concentrates. Everything's made from scratch. I've created a variety of different methods where the question is like, what's my goal with this extraction? Like, what am I hoping to achieve with it? So taking a very culinary approach to it as opposed to the stoner culture approach of like, let's get blitzed off the brownie.
Totally. And by taking that approach, I imagine what you're doing is you're focusing on sort of some of the flavors and
The terpene
sort of
profiles, absolutely.
and the profiles to kind of build into that particular dish, that particular item, just to make it that much more
You gotta
immersive.
think, this has been the forbidden fruit, right? No one was allowed to really work with it beforehand. And with the advancements in technologies now, the focus is on the terpene profile. So the industry teaches people sativa and indica, right? That's bullshit. That's not true.
Okay.
Right? Sativa and indica refer to the growth patterns of the plant. Sativas grow in warmer climates. That's why the flowers are longer and stringier. Your indicas grow in a colder climate. That's why the buds are more firmer and tense. So why am I cleaning my house on sativas and sitting on the couch munching out on my indicas?
Okay.
And those identical compounds, those terpenes, are also found in plants, fruits, and herbs.
Yeah.
So it's called an entourage effect when you combine a cannabinoid with a terpene.
Yeah.
And that makes you feel a certain way. A terpene on its own won't do anything to you. It's just a smell and a flavor.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We have these two receptors, a CB1 receptor and a CB2 receptor, and they're responsible for maintaining the balance within our central immune system, with our central nervous system. So where I'm going to create this arc of experience for our guests, right?
Okay.
We want to save those sedative terpenes for dessert.
Okay.
I want to use the energetic and chatty ones to begin with. What was really cool is as this started working for me here in Canada, I started working with some CFL players from the Argos, the Stampeders, and the Lions.
Yep.
And so we were creating recipes for them that were focusing on the therapeutic benefits of cannabis.
Okay.
Right? So as an example, I've got a hummus in my cookbook. It's a turmeric and ginger hummus. It's like the perfect bedtime snack. It's focusing on those anti-inflammatory properties, the superfoods of turmeric and ginger, and it's helping me sleep. Right? So here's a healthy bedtime snack to have 90 minutes before you go to bed. That's going to get you that 8-hour solid sleep and going to have you waking up feeling refreshed. So it's really exciting right now to see the NBA and the Major League Baseball allow cannabis, right? We are going to start to see a huge shift down in the U.S. So the question I get sometimes, like, why do I want cannabis in my food?
Yeah.
Other than that, it's awesome. There's some real therapeutic benefits. And, you know, once we break through these stigmas and preconceived notions of what culinary cannabis is, you know, there's going to be a whole new field of opportunity, you know, working this into sports medicine.
So, and that's a huge point, because I can imagine on top of you, yes, being on top of your culinary skill set to make sure that you're delivering great tasting food, it sounds like you have to be also very much, if not more, on top of the education process.
Well, that's been a lot.
And what does that look like?
That's been a lot of my success, is that there's a ton of education in our dinners, because I'm explaining this in each course, right? People sometimes are afraid to ask the question because they don't want to look stupid, right? And I say, there's no stupid questions at our dinners. If you want to know something, raise your hand, ask me, right? And so this is how we're going into more traditionally conservative areas. You know, I'm doing dinners in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Kansas City, Missouri, and Florida, and, you know, soon to be Louisiana. So as these states are starting to change their positioning,
and open up a little bit.
Dinners we do, this is the perfect way. Bring people into a familiar setting, dinner parties, right? Apply
Intimate.
Education, focus on the safety aspect of it, and you know, kind of walk them through. I always say, if you're ever going to do it, I'm the perfect person to introduce you to this, because, you know, we dose accurately, right? Everything is created, you know. The way I'm able to do that, every course has one infused component, right? So let's say the first course I'm doing a salad. We have an infused vinaigrette. I will make that vinaigrette 4 times. I make it once with no cannabis, once with a low dose, a medium dose, and a high dose, right? And so that happens for every single course. That way there's a lot of math that's involved with it, right? But having done this so much now, it's pretty easy for me to know what I got to do. That means that there's a lot more prep. There's a lot more cannabis I have to use. In America, you can't take cannabis from state to state. It has to stay within the state that it was purchased in.
Really?
So that means I have a ton of wastage, which my staff is pretty stoked about, because what I'll just do at the end of the night is, who wants to take this weed home with them? So yeah, but like, this is what you have to do.
Totally.
Right? Like, this is what I'm trying to show people. It's like, if you want to use the eyedropper with the isolate, cool, but it's lip syncing.
Totally.
Right? This is how you're going to have to do it. So
let's take a step back, because, you know, I'm a big lover and component when it comes to this sort of digital space. And you said that you've served over, correct me if I'm wrong, 15,000 people over the years.
We're coming up on that. Yeah.
And as the question I have is, how did you engage with these people, especially in the beginning? And so tell us a little bit about that.
Instagram. You know, I actually, in Canada, there's no restriction with cannabis on Instagram. In America, it's shadow banned. So anyone within the cannabis industry, the cannabis companies, you're shadow banned. You have no advertising rights. It's very difficult to operate social media if you're a cannabis brand. I emailed Meta every day for a year straight until I got someone to call me. And I literally mean every single day, saying, why are my ad rights blocked? Because in Canada, I could advertise. So I want to go do a dinner in Toronto. I create an ad on Instagram. I put it up. Now, my ad's got to be smart in a sense. I can't put cannabis dinner, right? So I had to build, in Canada, I really helped build that brand name recognition. Nomad Cook is cannabis dinners. Right.
Nomad Nights, I think you
Nomadic Nights is the American version. It was the infused dining series up here in Canada. You know, infused was a word we could use. So you had to learn the algorithms, right? What words were going to get the post block, what words wouldn't. You know, and here's what I said. With Canada being the first country to legalize, Canadians had a real chance to become the leaders in this industry. Now,
the pioneers.
The Canadian government fucked everyone over by over-regulating, tying it to the Tobacco Act, you know, and really prevented some people from growing. I think because I operated in such a gray space that, again, I just put my foot over that line and said, until someone pushed me back, you know, I'm just going to keep going. And, you know, I had over 50 news articles in that 3-year period. The day I moved to the U.S., High Times puts out a 4-page article on me. And that was my marketing material for the first 3 months. You know, my first year was working with a lot of brands. What I was proposing is that we if a brand would hire me, we bring in bud tenders from the retail stores.
Okay.
And that whole dinner is built around the brand.
Yeah.
So how do we leave this memory with the bud tenders to then share to the consumer? Bud tenders dictate 95% of consumer buying habits in cannabis. They're the most important person in the industry.
Because they're educating all of the customers and the people that
comes
come in.
and goes, what do you like? All they got is names on the board, right? What is that?
That doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything, right? And so the bud tender saying, hey, this strain tastes like limoncello ice cream with caramel and walnuts. Like, sounds pretty tasty, man. Right?
Tell me more.
Right? Tell me more. So that was my whole pitch was, let's get away from, do you want an indica or sativa? That doesn't mean anything. And let's sell by experience. And so that first year, I had a ton of work. I did 9 times my output in my first year in America to my biggest year in Canada.
And you know what, Travis, because one of the things I think not only that you did in terms of being an innovator in the space, but I think you are like a traditional go-getter in terms of like a salesman attitude of like getting things done.
Well, that's been a big thing to my success is I come from that sales background, right?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't a lot of chefs doing this? Because it's not easy, right? Like the sales part of it, that's the easy part for me, right? And another thing the pandemic gave me was time to actually take all this knowledge and put it into a cookbook. So my first cookbook came out last fall.
Okay.
And that's where I did my first US tour.
Yeah.
So we went to Florida for 10 days, New York for a week, Chicago, Seattle, San Fran, LA, Las Vegas, and then we finished in Phoenix. And we did that over 2 months. And, you know, the landscape then all of a sudden completely shifted, where in my first year, I was able to raise a lot in sponsorship fees to help promote these products.
Yep.
The recession comes around and all those marketing budgets are gone, right? So this year starts off in January and Meta finally gives me the right to advertise after a year of emailing. And so I'm like, okay, here we go. And so I started Nomadic Nights. I ran an ad in Chicago, boom, sold it out, 40 tickets.
Okay.
Right. And so all of a sudden, okay, let's I kind of jumped over a big thing on the cookbook tour. We had the New York Times come to our New York dinner and they did a full feature on myself and the whole Infused Dining series. So to get that, the biggest news publication in America, to do a story on it, because the cannabis scene in New York is the biggest in the world. There's nothing like it. You got food trucks that are cannabis shops on the side of the street.
Okay.
You know, they say the black market in Canada is 4 times the size of the legal market. I think the black market in New York is 10 times the size. It's actually a problem, right? Because people are complaining there's just weed everywhere. You've got illegal, like we had our legal dispensaries in Canada. Yeah. They're everywhere in New York. Corner stores, bodegas. There's 10 million people in that city. How are you going to police everything, right?
Can't.
So
it's impossible.
You know, New York's become a really big market for me, but where my busiest market in the country now is Seattle. My second biggest is Kansas City. Okay. The Midwest, the smaller cities that get overlooked most of the time, that don't have a lot of stuff on, people love this.
Oh, because you're bringing, like, just bottom line, a new experience, a new activation.
You know,
that.
Minnesota just turned legal August 1st, so we were there 3 days, 60 people, sold it out. Right? Announced it. I'm going back on September 11th, sold it out. You know, so the smaller city, like, honestly, the hardest cities to do it in right now, Chicago, LA, San Francisco. California is a little oversaturated. They've had this going on for a long time. You know, Chicago, when you get into the bigger cities, you're not just competing against other cannabis chefs. You're competing against major league sports, fine dining. There's everything, right?
All entertainment, all different aspects.
Right? So, you know, well, I've been to Chicago 3 times now for dinners. You know, but what I'm recognizing is that the smaller cities, the people are really hungry for this. So, you know, I'm spending, I've done 106,000 miles this year flying.
You say that so casually, but that is crazy.
It is crazy.
So I'm kind of curious, as you said, last year was when you finally put out your cookbook. Yeah. And I'm kind of curious, what did that do for your brand and what did that do for your business as you now have this new product out there?
The cookbook was a great learning moment for me, because I had TrueLeaf, the largest cannabis company in the world, sponsor the book. We put one of their strains for every recipe as a pairing. In my photo, I wore their shirt. Now, the person who helped set all that up, she leaves a week before my cookbook comes out. and True Leaf says, we're not putting your book in our store.
Really?
So I now have a branded cookbook that no other dispensary will hold in their store, right? And so I shot myself in the foot a bit. Now, they had sponsored, without their sponsorship, I don't get the photographer because he was expensive.
Food photographers, in terms of all of the intricacies and the placements.
I'll tell you what, we shot that entire cookbook in 2 days, 44 recipes. Because I was paying for it, it was like, we are getting this done in 2 days. We are not moving to day 3.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was to put out 44 recipes in, 2 days. It was a ton of work, but the photographer's work was beautiful because the goal was, let's create a coffee table piece. Someone who may never cook with cannabis. Now in my book, there's 80 pages of theory and lecture. So,
education in terms of getting.
So this is for anyone who wants to, whether you're a culinary professional or you're a home cook, this book is going to teach you the fundamentals, the safety aspects, give you the extraction methods you need to really be able to do this properly.
Yeah.
The book, it actually peaked on Amazon when I gave a speech in Little Rock, Arkansas. I just got my first reporting of sales numbers after 7 months. We've sold just under 800 copies.
Okay.
About 600 of them have been sold through my events. So hear me, the salesperson, I am selling a majority of the books. But, it's on Amazon. You can get it from there. And the feedback I'm getting on it, people just don't know it's out there. But the other cannabis cookbooks, they're really focused, again, more on that brownie aspect, right? So
you're trying to educate people, you're focusing on, again, some of the profiles and the details.
The cookbook to me was like a feather in my cap, a proud moment that, it was a bitch to write. It took me almost 3 years. My huge ups to my wife of getting on my back, not getting on my back, but just constantly saying, like,
pushing you to, like, get it done.
Get it done.
Yeah.
Get it done. Right. And
because you're doing that while still trying to navigate this space, while pushing your sales and stuff, and then also surviving.
But, that cookbook, back to 2021, when we did that cross-country tour on the motorhome, Russell Hendricks, the largest food and equipment supplier for restaurants in Canada, 15 locations across the country, sponsored a culinary cannabis education certificate that I created. So we certified 250 people with this safety certificate.
So that was across Canada.
Across Canada.
Yeah.
CTV, Global, CBC, all did a feature on the news about it. We had 9 different newspapers write on it. So I had the most ever attention come from this education thing, right? And, then the cookbook comes out. So right now I'm in the process of building on an online education platform. People can go on and take this course from their own home. We're speaking with universities all over the US and Canada about licensing the program to them so that people that are going to the schools can get credit for taking this course. I almost feel like the education part is like first to market. Whoever gets the material out first. So I'm actually building this right now, working with, people who come off a chef's table and tastemakers to help film this.
Yep.
And, January 1st next year, we'll have this out. So, along the way, I don't know if I ever knew where I was going. It was kind of head down. We'll figure this out as we go. My ultimate goal was turn Nomad Cook into a culinary cannabis brand with products. We're still on target for doing that, but it's the education that, I've built credibility. I don't think there's anyone who's served more people than me. There are some bigger cannabis chefs out there, but they work for Dave Chappelle and they cost $25,000 to hire for an event. And, hey, I'll take that money. I'll take those jobs. But,
there's a difference between that and then serving again, all these people personally.
And part of what I did this year was I lowered my pricing, right? And that's what I pitched to brands as well, is pay half the price of the tickets for people, right? Let's make sure the everyday person can come in and do this and not just the upper class or the wealthy, right? It's quantity and quality.
Totally. So Travis, watching you over these years kind of build out this emerging space, engage with all these people across Canada and in the States, I'm kind of curious, what keeps you going? Because it's not easy. And like,
that's such an easy question. I mean, listen, when I lived here in Edmonton and I worked in oil and gas, I had a giant hole inside of me. Nothing would fill it. I tried everything. The hardest thing to do was walk away from that 6-figure salary, right? That security.
Those golden
The
handcuffs.
5 weeks paid vacation, the 30 rounds of golf I played in the summer. I had a pretty cushy position, but I wasn't happy. And as soon as I started doing this, I became happy. And I realized, listen, it was going to take me a long time to get back to making that money again. And I just all of a sudden had pride in what I was doing. People were proud of me,
Totally.
Also all those naysayers that told me I couldn't, right? I felt my first couple of years, I really had something to prove.
Yeah.
I found myself, it's wild. It's wild. When I started it, I just wanted to go to Montreal and Toronto.
Yeah.
Now I'm cooking in Chicago, New York, Miami. And what's even cooler.
Huge places.
Well, September 29th, I head to Europe with the Soho House. We're doing 2 dinners in London, 1 in Paris and 1 in Amsterdam. So, what was an aim to get me to Montreal, and now I'm on October 11th going to be cooking in Paris, France. It's just wild. And I found myself at the forefront of this movement, and like this, I'm all in, right? It's just, it's brought me I met my wife because of this. It's brought me happiness and peace. And, it's once you can find your thing, grab onto it and put everything in. So
That's so wicked to hear. And fast forwarding to like present time and today.
Yeah.
So as you've been, again, living in the States and you've been building out that new atmosphere, that new lane and that new industry, what brings you to Edmonton?
man, this is, I'm a Vancouver boy. I'm a West Coaster. I'm constantly mistaken for an Albertan. I'm like, no.
And I thought you were born in Alberta too.
Right. Actually, I've seen, just a little side note here, a funny like top 10 things you say to Canadians to upset them.
Yeah.
Number 3 was ask someone if they're from Alberta. When they say no, why? Go, you give off Alberta vibes. And like, I think only Canadians will get that. It's funny. But, I moved here in 2010. I didn't know who I was. I was not a man yet, right? Yeah, I was 30 years old, but I was still immature and young. I became a man living in this city. I found myself. I became a foodie living here. I didn't care about food before, I started this. So Edmonton is a very special place in my heart. I'm always bragging about it, saying it's the hidden food gem of the country, that it's the best people. I don't spend $1 on marketing in Edmonton. Any event I announce, we sell out. So tomorrow and Saturday, we're doing 2 50-person dinners.
Yep.
About 30 minutes out of the city, along the North Saskatchewan River. We got one of the country's most renowned chefs from Montreal, Chef Anthony Musso-Rivard. His restaurant, Le Musso, one of the top ranked restaurants in the country. He's just flown in today. He's doing the dinner with me. So
Wicked.
What's really cool is when I was doing Nomad Dinner Club, reaching out to these chefs saying, hey, let me put these events on for you.
Yep.
These chefs are now reaching out to me, right? I want to come and do a cannabis dinner. I can't do it in my restaurant. I can't do it here. So I've been extremely fortunate to work with some incredibly talented chefs. And that's really how I've grown as a chef, because I haven't worked in a restaurant. I didn't go to culinary school.
Yeah.
School of YouTube. Right. But
And let's stick there on those two things, because I think a lot of people don't understand sort of like how much you're empowered to kind of, bottom line, take the reins and learn and be educated to YouTube, but more importantly about sort of that collaboration round. So yes, like double click into that one.
It's also my favorite thing about what I do is getting to work with these other chefs.
Yeah.
Like, we're now have expanded into these big, massive events. We just rented a ferry in Seattle, a car passenger ferry, and we toured Lake Union for 3 hours with 100 people on it.
While you're cooking it.
While we're cooking. We brought on the tables and chairs. We built a kitchen on the end of the boat, right? I flew in a whole bunch of chefs to come help me.
Yeah.
So it's an experience now coming to our events, and, spending a couple days with world famous chefs in a house, you're all together. It's the most electrifying, energetic thing. I love it. Like, we just picked up our chefs this morning. They're currently back at the house, getting the prep done, right? And the energy's already picked up, right? I'm fucking tired, man. I am tired and burnt out.
Yeah.
And the second chef got in the car, there's a shot of energy. So, it's fun, right? Like,
Yeah. And what does that collaborate for the people who are curious? Like, what does that collaboration look like exactly?
So, we create a menu together. We're doing 4 courses. We each take 2. We share our ideas, so we get continuity from start to end. And then I help these chefs on their extraction part of like, here's where we can integrate the cannabis into your dish, right? So teaching them a little bit on how you do on that side. And then, we kind of put it all together and, we try to use what's local and fresh and come into Alberta. We got that beautiful Alberta beef.
Yep.
I don't know about the food prices in this province right now. I paid $10 for parsley, but
it's out of whack right now.
The inflation in this, like going away from 2 years and coming back, I'll tell you what, I understand America's so much better now. Through the pandemic, I think Canadians got a little snobbish. You saw the George Floyd protest, all the crap the media was putting out about COVID and all this, and Canadians felt they were a little better. And I went down to the U.S. and traveling the U.S., I was in St. Louis. It's the saddest city I've ever seen.
Okay.
It shocked me like nothing ever has, and I've been to third world countries. Not saying it's a third world country. America's the biggest, best, number 1 country, and they have given up on their citizens. There's so many abandoned houses, abandoned schools. When I was in Minnesota, where the George Floyd riots were, they didn't fix anything. They just boarded it up. There's a whole street of burnt down, boarded up buildings that just fuck it. So
move on from it.
The government has forgotten about its people. They don't care, right? And I know why people voted for Trump. Because he wasn't part of the system and it pissed off the system. And so that's the way that people are fighting back. And, there's definitely things I miss about Canada. I definitely will be moving back here one day, but I feel extremely fortunate to be down there, getting to travel over and see how.
Because bottom line, firsthand, you're not necessarily you're seeing it and you're able to form your own opinions because you're seeing it, experiencing it, building relationships with people. I've become
more conservative living in the U.S. I think again a lot of it was from the pandemic. I feel we were lied to. Listen, I got all 3 pokes because I could not go down to the U.S. without it. I could not work without it. So fuck it, give it to me. Right. And not to jump all down that rabbit hole, but we were lied to, and I don't trust the media anymore, right? And so, to me, podcasts are the best way, I think, to get out information to the people because it's not protected by advertisers, right?
100%. And there's enough time to kind of flush out the conversation and the details and just iron out.
It's funny because I actually huge Joe Rogan fan now. And I didn't start listening to him until they tried to cancel him 2 years ago.
Likewise too.
2 million new listeners he got when they tried to cancel him. Because I was like, okay, what is he saying? I want to listen.
Totally.
Listen, there's some crazy shit on there. But he's sitting down with people for 4 hours talking. He had Robert Kennedy Jr. on, and I sat and I listened. I had no idea who RFK was, but I'm a big Kennedy guy. And I walked out of there just thinking, wow, I'm so glad I got to listen to that conversation.
And to then make your own decision and opinion on that after you heard 4 hours worth of information and details and discussions and dialogue.
They're not being paid by advertisers, so they don't have to worry what the topic of conversation is.
Totally.
And, I think we're seeing a shift right now and with everything, right? Our world is changing.
Totally. And that kind of goes back to sort of one of the more bigger ethos is that when it comes to sort of digital media, social media, people who are kind of taking the reins and producing their own content, their own information, that's becoming more valuable. And I imagine that's part of the reason why you've been building a brand.
That's essentially what I'm doing as well, right? I mean, people couldn't do what I'm doing 20 years ago because you didn't have social media. You didn't have the internet to way to market and advertise, right?
So even though the industry is old, cannabis is old. There's people who've been growing it. There's people who've been developing it. A
lot of people are asking, why do you do what you do? And I go, well, if a musician and a comedian can tour, why can't a chef? Why do I got to fly to Chicago to go to Linea, right? So, I've been kind of breaking the mold in that sense. And every day I get a message from a chef around America saying, can I come be part of one of your events, or how do you do what you do? my advice to everyone is like, man, 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours, you will perfect your craft.
Yeah.
Right? Put the time in. You know, I've gotten really good at doing our pop-up events. I've had chefs come in and do events for me before when I'm not there, and their service goes 3 hours. My service is 90 minutes.
Okay.
We are timed, right? And to be able to do that, you got to get everything prepped ahead of time. And, you know, the tour I just did, we did 3 dinners in Baltimore. The next day we flew to Minnesota. We did 3 dinners in Minnesota. The next day we flew to Kansas City. We did 5 dinners in Kansas City. The next day I flew to Seattle, and we built that boat cruise in 2 days. So I did, 11 dinners and 15 nights in 4 different cities.
That's crazy,
Right?
Travis.
That's so many moving parts you need to have ready, because we were landing with 20 people coming in the next day, right? So,
and Travis, I gotta call you out. You said you gotta get your 10,000 hours in, but that analogy is around, you know, particular craft. What you just outlined is event planning, it's marketing, it's sales, it's the culinary aspect of it.
but that's today's age, is where you can now wear every hat. Right? I think you're looking at the writer's strike that's going on in Hollywood right now. Okay.
Yep.
I'm a huge Bill Maher fan. I have never missed one of Bill Maher's episodes. That's how I learned about politics in America. That's how I get my news about what's going on around the world. So his show on HBO can't be on right now. Right? His writers aren't allowed, they're striking, but he started a podcast. That's now one of the top viewed podcasts. And HBO doesn't have any say over what he's doing, right? You can now put that hat on. You know, if I didn't have my training and background in sales, I wouldn't be able to do what I was doing, right? That was a skill set that I learned from my father. And, you know, it's kind of funny. When I look back at my road to where I'm at, like every job I've ever had was getting me ready for this.
Yeah.
Right?
And you know, it's so funny because, like, just recently, I was interviewing one of my good friends who just put out this book called The Bold Ones. And it's funny, you say it wasn't for your sales, but I think there's another factor that, yes, that skill set of sales gave you like an unfair advantage, but like there's just like that boldness that you have to have to be brave enough and to be smart enough to like be part of this emerging industry, regardless of, I can imagine, the amount of naysayers and individuals trying to push back
that
against
for
you.
motivation. My first year, everyone told me I couldn't do what I do. You know, the very first chef I ever worked for in Kelowna told me I was crazy for leaving my career to come into being a chef. He didn't think I could do it. He works with me now.
That's hilarious.
You know, 5 years later, however far down we are, you know, I bring him down to the U.S. constantly. He's a super skilled chef, knowledgeable. You know, he, about a year ago, left the restaurants to become a private chef. And I try and help him where I can with, you know, my advice and that. But, you know, there's something about creating your own path.
Totally.
Right? And others will look at it and say, I want to do that too. And, you know, I encourage more to do this. If my whole goal with Culinary Cannabis when I started, I don't want to be the best chef in the world. It would be nice, but that's not going to happen, right? I just want to open the door for the next generation. You know,
I dig it.
If I can be remembered as the guy who left that door open so you didn't have to do it in an Airbnb, so your restaurant has cannabis on the menu, you know, to me, that would be great. But I have achieved all the goals I've set for myself, right? I am just now loving what I'm doing. I'm, you know, happy. Listen, there's a shelf life. I'm breaking down. You know, I've got carpal tunnel in both my wrists. You know, I eat poorly when I'm traveling. So, you know, I turn 40 next year. So now all of a sudden, you know, health is a very big, important thing. So,
the real thing.
You know, that's why I'm building the culinary class. That's why I'm focusing on getting the product line out there.
Yeah.
Because eventually I want to get to where I'm doing maybe 1 or 2 events a month, not 10. But the 10 a month got to happen, right? I'm getting national recognition in the U.S. because let's just even take cannabis out of it. There's no chef touring like I am, right? So, you know, there's a uniqueness to what I'm doing that when I do hit these moments of burnout, just remind myself that a chef goes to the same kitchen every day. He works Friday and Saturday nights. His social life, his love life, they all hurt because of it, right? And listen, I hate being away from my wife for 2 weeks a month, but it's a means to an end. So that when we have kids, you know, everything. I can stay at home more. You know, I want to, I'm a nomad, so I always want to keep traveling. You know, we're getting to do Europe this fall. Thailand just legalized cannabis. So that's my goal next year. Let's go to Thailand.
Okay.
Right? Let's find a hotel that'll bring me out. Let's go cook over there. Right. So I've got some goals that I still will create and I aim for, but if it all ended tomorrow, I would still be happy. And
you covered off that list. You checked off a lot of boxes. You've broken a ton of ground.
Yeah.
And you've gotten like that's insane.
Yeah. It's when I sit back and look at, even before I was coming in here to meet with you, I just remember our phone call, because I actually moved back to Edmonton for 3 weeks in, what year was that? 2016, I think. Yeah, it was 2016. I came back for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was fucking cold and snowy. And I said, fuck this. I went back to Vancouver. I was like, I can't believe I just moved to Edmonton for the third time in my life. Because every time I left, I was like, well, Alberta, that was nice seeing you, but I am out of here.
Not coming back.
But I mean, I love this province.
Yeah.
I love this city.
Yeah.
So
to echo those same sentiments, I always tell people, especially when you travel to different parts of the world, different parts of Canada, there's something special about this city.
Yep.
In terms of the people, you can't necessarily put your finger on it, but it's just in the culture,
I
and
think
you have to experience
Edmonton is such a transient city, right? If you want to make money in this country, you don't have a skill set, you move to Edmonton. There are enough jobs around here, whether it's in oil and gas, construction, whatever, that you can come here and make good money. You just got to put up with 8 months of snow and coldness. But
coldness.
You get around that. You see, like Toronto and Vancouver, they're unaffordable to live in.
Yeah.
And you see the exodus starting to happen. I tell you, if you got money to invest right now, get down and buy some property in Calgary. Netflix moving their head studio there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think in 10 years, Calgary starts seeing pricing like Vancouver, right? So we'll keep Edmonton the hidden gem so we can keep property values low here. But
we'll see how that goes in this current climate. Yeah. So Travis, as you kind of like, and you are like reading my mind in terms of some of these like last conversations or pieces, but like, so you're going to be now opening up a new arm in terms of some of these new emerging countries and nations that are legalizing. You're now going to be going next month into overseas, into Paris and things like that. Yeah. What's next for you? Like, what's the next major milestone that you're kind of putting out there in terms of hoping to achieve?
To have the brand be acquired by one of these large cannabis companies who will make the products, and to launch the education arm. So those are the two focuses. We'll keep doing the dinners, pay the bills, but the dinners are really marketing, right? I am marketing the brand. All those cannabis companies that hired me to market their brand, the guest always remembers the Nomad Cook first. Even though it was a dinner for Sundial, they remember me first, right?
100%.
So I let everyone else pay my marketing bills for the last 5 years. And that's why now I can tour nomadic nights with no sponsorship and sell everything out, right? So, the goal is to get these two things up that can generate revenue without me killing myself, right? So those are the goals.
Travis, I wish I could spend more time with you breaking things down, but like again, I want to thank you for taking some time, because I know your schedule's busy and you have your team now
I've
cooking.
only been waiting 3 years to come on your podcast, so I'm glad it only took me hitting some big success where finally I could be fit on your show. So
listen, Travis, this has been long overdue. But again, I want to say thank you so much for taking some time to like come sit down and chat. I'm excited to see again your experiences and watch it unfold and
what
document
we got
that.
going on this weekend in Edmonton is surreal, man. This spot we're setting up on along the North Saskatchewan. It's been raining these couple days. We get 25 degrees tomorrow, 27 on Saturday. When we did the event in Seattle, your outdoor event in Seattle, you're like, please don't fucking rain. It was 32 degrees. The gods are on my side right now. We got a limo picking up our guests to bring them out to site tomorrow. So it's going to be really cool because it is nothing like anyone's experienced before. It's nothing we've done before. So we're all shooting from the hip. I got to get up tomorrow morning, go build a kitchen at 7 a.m. But hey, if we can build a kitchen on the end of a ferry, I think we can build one around a campfire.
100%. Awesome, Travis. Looking forward to hearing more and seeing firsthand your future.
Go Canucks, go.